All right, guys. Hi. The nice thing is that I know all of you that are on this video right now. I can basically call you by name, which is good. But let's pretend I don't know. I do not know you at all. Please tell me in the chat if you can hear me. Uh, just give me some feedback. Tell me if you can hear me in the chat, and we'll start. Can you guys hear me? All right, perfect. Thank you, Pumai, for answering the question. So today, what I will be doing is just a quick introduction of the Altium interface. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I'll respond to them as we go along. Okay. So right now, I will assume that we all have our Altium designer running and ready. And we have page that looks more or less like this at the moment. As you can see on my cursor right now, um, I have I have the home page over here. Um, this is something that might not be the case for you. I can close the home page, and this is the normal interface that I have. But if I want to go back to the home page again, I would click there on this icon here. I click there, and the nice thing about this home page is that, just giving it some time to load, is that it gives you different short lessons that you can use to learn a few functionalities within the Altium Designer. So yeah, it is something that you should be exploring whenever you get time. Okay, so let's start. Since I will be teaching PC board designer using Altium Designer, so I will be doing two things. I will be teaching you the software. I'll be teaching you the art. I'll be teaching you Altium Designer, and I'll be teaching you PC board design. So you'll be getting two things in one in this thing, in this whole adventure that you and I are starting. All right, so at first, as we can see here, I've got my main Altium page. If you've got multiple screens, you are welcome to split things in multiple screens, but I'll show you how to do that as we go on. I might not need to do that because you are smart enough to understand how to split in multiple screens. But for now, let's just focus on this interface. Okay. So starting on the right side, as you can see the comment tab over here. I have a pin icon there. If I click on it, it can disappear. If I move, you see, as you can see now, it can disappear. If I want it back, I can just pin it over there, and it will stay. As we can see, we can adjust this left tab. That's not the only tab that we have there. On one side, on the bottom side of it, you also see that there is a manufacturer part search. That's another tab. This one we can use it to search for parts. Right, I need to explain what do I mean by parts. By part, I mean component, like a resistor is a component, okay? A capacitor is a component, all right. When we get to do libraries, we'll discuss them, we'll discuss about them a little bit more. But this is a manufacturer part search, and the component that you have here will depend on the libraries that you have installed at the moment. All right, so you have few categories: passive, connectors, and so on and so on, but we will get to this when we start doing libraries. Okay, so I will close that. I will not, I will just leave that panel like that. You can add more panels. As we advance in this course, you will see that there will be some panels that will be a lot more useful than the others. Okay, for instance, if I go at the bottom right corner there and I click on the panels, you'll see all kinds of panels that we can add at the moment. All right, each one of them has a specific function. For instance, as you can see for component here, we will get this, you'll use a lot because of course you deal with component a lot when you design PC boards. Design reuse, we'll discuss this, what it means when we get there, and so on. The one that you'll be using a lot is the properties panel, but at the moment, since we don't have anything on going on for us, we don't have the properties panel appearing yet. So what is happening here is that the panels that will be available to you will depend on the interface that you have over here. For instance, if you are putting together a schematic, you'll have different kind of panels, different set of panels. If you're putting together a PC board, if you are working on a PC board side, you'll have also all sorts of panels also that will be available to you depending on what you have in front of you. But because we don't have anything at the moment, that's why we have a very limited number of panels there. But let's say if I select one, let's say I select we already have comments. No, we don't have comment because it's not selected. If it's not ticked, if I ticked on comment, as you can see there, it appears on the bottom. If I go to the panels again and I select, say, design reuse, this one, it appeared on the outside of it, which means I can just drag it and bring it on the right side like that and pin it over there. So now you can see I have different tabs. I have manufacturer part search, comment, design reuse. I can choose to remove this by just right clicking on it and say close design reuse, and it goes away. If I want to add another one, I will click over there and select the panel that I want. Like you see, storage manager also opens up outside that right tab there. If I want, I can bring it there as well. Release, it will appear there. If I want to remove it, I'm gonna say right click, allow dock, you see, horizontally, or I can just drag it out like this, and there we go. Okay, that's the right side of your Altium window. Basically, that summarizes the few panels that we have. So I'm going to remove storage manager because I don't need that. I'm going to close the comments. I'm only going to leave the manufacturer part search at the moment because when we start drawing a schematic, we will be using that a lot. Okay. So now the next thing I am going to show you is the preferences. You will deal with this a lot. On the right hand still, but on the top side there is that gear icon over there. If you click on it, it brings up the system preferences. This is where you set up your Altium designer. You set it up the way you want. Okay. A lot of these things are very explanatory, so you can go through different settings and set your Altium interface the way you want it. For instance, in the general, under the system tab in the general um, menu, you see it says at startup, what do you want? You want Altium to reopen automatically, okay? Or you want it to open the home tab, or you want it to show the startup screen. You can set up whatever you want. Okay. For instance, I don't want it to be opening the home tab all the time. I don't want it to show the startup screen. I can disable that, but I want it to reopen the last project group, and I want it to show the startup screen. Okay. So I can disable that or enable whatever I want to enable. In the view, and as you can see there, it shows the asterisks. That means that there is a setting here. Things have been modified, but they haven't been saved yet. Okay, great. So if we go to the view, the first thing that it shows us is we can see there. For me, I don't know how it shows for you, but for me, it says autosave desktop. So what does that mean? Say for instance, I have multiple screens, right? And I have on one screen I have my schematic, on the other screen I have my PC board. All right. By ticking this option, okay, it basically tells Altium to save the windows where they are on whichever screen they are on currently. All right. So meaning, if I close my Altium Designer and then I reopen it, it will remember where each page was. Okay, so that's what the autosave desktop option. It is very useful because if, for instance, you're using multiple screens, it's always nice to have schematic on one page and on one screen, I mean, and PC board on the other screen, so that you don't have to always move between windows. All right, it's a very nice option. Um, The rest of the options I don't necessarily need to explain for now. The UI theme, light gray, dark gray. What you see right now on my screen is dark gray. If you change that, it will look like that. And it's great. It might be quite heavy on your eyes, but you can here you can choose whichever option works for you. I prefer dark gray. I like dark themes and everything, so this works for me. On the right side of this preference menu, we have the general settings. Over here, we can see the different options. I can say remember window for each document kind, or not. I can select various options depending on my own preferences. Okay. And then the document bar is this left bar that you see here. So you will be grouping document if needed by project or by document kind. it is better to group document by project. Okay, so but we will get to see what this does when we start working with projects very soon. All right. I'm gonna skip account management. I'm gonna go to transparency. This is also based on what you want. All right. So um, you can just go through these options and you'll see what it mean and what you can do with them. On the navigation, on the other hand, um, on the navigation, uh, right, on the navigation, this is a highlighting method. For instance, um, please make a note of this. We will go through this again when we start working with physical parts and PCBs and stuff. But this is very important for now. Say select, make sure that you say selecting and maybe keep it. Just try to mimic the options that I have right now. All right. So zooming, dimming, and selecting. All right. Then these are the options that we will be keeping there. I will show you what this does in the end. Okay. Um, on the objects to display, I will also leave the options as they are by default like this. All right. The next thing I'm going to enable is cross selection. What does this imply? Cross selection, if you read there, it gives you a little bit of an insight, but in short, it allows you, if you select something on the schematic, it selects it on the PCB. If you select something on the PC board, it selects it on the schematic. All right. So it allows you to do that. That's what cross selection does. It's a very nice option. You can dim, you can also, you can select what is allowed to cross select. I only want to select component. I don't want to select nets and pins for now. Just select, and I don't want it to do anything. I don't want it to zoom in. I don't want it to dim. Just select. All right, great. Um, I'm gonna leave this for now, and I'm gonna go to doc design insight. Now, design insight, what does this do? Say you have a bunch of projects on your left side here, and you want to quickly have a look without opening it. We want to see what is on a specific schematic. So that's what Design Insight allows you. So you can quickly browse through a project or through a document. So I'm just going to allow those two. And this option here tells you how long do you want to hover your mouse for before it actually starts showing you what's inside a specific project. That's so by sliding all the way, that's 4 seconds. By sliding all the way this side, on the left, it's 0 seconds. So I'm just gonna leave it to maybe say this is could be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm gonna say for 1 second, that's perfect. All right, guys, don't you can put your question in the chat, or you can always go back in the video to review this later because this video will stay online. And although I'm live, you can always go back in the video. Okay. Next is the projects panel. Right now, we'll just leave the setup as it is at the moment. Okay. Default locations here, you can set where you want to set up your projects by default. For me, for instance, you can read it says you can specify default location for your document and libraries. This path will be referenced when opening document and searching for libraries. All right. We'll get to set this up when we get to that point because today we're only doing the interface. Okay. File types. These are all kinds of files that Altium supports, all right? So we don't have to change anything here. That is perfect, okay? New document defaults. Well, at the moment, we don't have templates yet. If I click on go to template, as you can see, it shows me where I can fetch my templates, but we will get to set up our own templates, or I can set up templates and share it to you guys so that we can start using for our course. All right, that is fine. So we don't need anything here. File-based libraries, we will handle these when we get to libraries, because as we all know, you cannot design PC board if you don't have a preset library. Depending on where you want to get your components from, there must be a library somewhere. Okay, so at the moment, this is what we have, but we will get to have more as we go on. We learn how to create our own, we learn how to import our own libraries, we will learn how to do all kinds of stuff with libraries, all right? And yeah, so for now, we leave this as it is. Device sheets, we leave it like this for now. As we get to this point, we will, if ever we get to this point, we will go there. SVN libraries, we will also get to do this if needed, but most people don't necessarily need to do this. But it is something that we can also learn. I can show you how this works and what is useful when it comes to SVN libraries. Pod providers. Now, and the pod providers, remember, Altium, I don't know if you know this, but Altium has a capability of checking stock of specific component, all right? So you can specify which provider it will be checking from. For instance, right now you can see I have Allied Electronics, or I should have Arrow as well, yes. And I have Avnet, all right? So, but we will get to deal with these later, but for now we leave them as they are. Component types, this will depend on our libraries. So we don't have anything to do at the moment here. And then component rule check, these will also be these will set up as we progress in the course. For instance, what happens is here is that it will be checking the component per se, how you have designed it, all right? But normally we do not get to deal with this, okay? So just to give you an example, so if, let's say, for instance, a pin doesn't have a designator, it will be warning you. Do we want it to set it as a warning or as an error? We can say no. If it doesn't have a designator, let's say it's going to be an error. So it will flag as an error. If we don't have a pin name, it will flag it as an error. So this one here, it sets up how you want your Altium designer to react whenever you have missing information in a component, for instance, or how the design is, or the schematic is. So you want to, if you want it to be a lot more aggressive, for instance, as you can see here, if it doesn't have default designator, it was just a warning. But if I want it to be more aggressive, I would say no, 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 no. If I don't have a default designator, flag it as an error, so that whenever I'm working on a schematic, if I want to move on the PC board and I don't have a default designator, at least it will flag it. Or when I'm creating a library, it will flag it. All right. So this is basically where you set those the that rule, that aggressiveness. Okay. So that's basically what happens in the data management tab of the preferences. All right. I'm going to do the schematic and then we'll leave it on the schematic for now. The rest of the stuff, like the PCB editor preferences, we will look at them when we start doing the PC board. Okay. So on the schematic, on the general, what happens? Now, let's start by setting our units. In the PC board language, depending also where you live, you will basically hear two units. You will hear mils and you will hear millimeters. If you are doing this course at this point, you probably understand what a mil is and what a millimeter is. A mil is a thousandth of an inch. So you take 1 inch, you divide it by 1,000. What you get as a result, that's a mil. All right, a milli-inch. I think that was the idea. Okay. A millimeter is the unit that we are mostly comfortable with, and most of the components, most of the stuff you'll be working on will be designed into millimeters. So it is very important to grab a unit and stick with it. All right. So throughout this course, we'll be using millimeters. Okay, we'll be using millimeters. All right. Now, pin margin. Let's leave it for now. And the next options we'll be looking at. These options over here specify how you do different things in your schematic. For instance, um, break wires at auto junctions. If you enable that, we will see what it does specifically when we get there. Um, Convert cross junction, for instance, as we can see, this is not enabled. So when we get to that point, we'll enable it and we'll see what it does specifically. All right. It's very nice to show you what these different options do rather than me telling you exactly what it is, because you're going to end up forgetting. All right. So we will do all of these things when we get there. Okay. So for now, I am going to leave the most of these options like this. Over here, I'm going to leave also the alphanumeric suffix over there like that. What I need to specify is, for instance, is the default blank sheet. All right, this one here, I am going to say, you know what? Let's use an A4, for instance. That would be our default. All right, so that will be the only option that I'll change. But these are the things that you can always change later on. We don't have to keep that in our head. We can always change that later on. Okay, I'm gonna go to graphical editing. Over here, you will see various options that we will not touch at the moment, but again, they do different kind of things. For instance, when you are naming pins, if you put this before a letter, for instance, it will put a negative sign on top of it. We will do that when we get to the libraries. All right. For instance, over here, if I want to click on something, I can just click on it and then it will select. But if I select this option, I will need to, before selecting something, I'll need to press shift first. It can be useful for some people, it cannot be useful for others. It's all up to you. All right. One option that I like a lot here is the cursor. I prefer a large cursor because um, it helps me see and align things properly. All right, but this is up to you. I will show you what difference this makes just now. On the compiler, we don't change a single thing here for now. Autofocus, okay, we're not going to change anything here at the moment. Library auto zoom, nothing. Grid, very important. Okay, this is going to be very important for us. Remember, I said we will stick to millimeter as our unit, right? So grids will influence how things are aligned and how things are connect to one another on the schematic. This is very important because the grid applies both on the PC board and on the schematic. You will see how this becomes very useful. Okay, so at the moment, I am going to focus on the metric grid. All right. For the sake of this course, I am going to only enable one grid here, which is the one snap grid, which is a 2.5 millimeter grid, and we'll experiment with it. Should things change, we will edit the grid and we'll see how it goes. All right. But put in mind that our grid will be a 2.5 millimeter grid with a visible grid. Our visible grid will be 0.5 millimeter there, 0.5 millimeter there, 0.5 millimeter there. Maybe I should not change this and show you how this changed. You know what? Let me just leave them there on 1 millimeter and I'll show you exactly what it does. Okay. I'm just gonna leave it on 1 millimeter now. Let me just give it back to default, all right? And then when we start with the schematic, for instance, I'll show you what this does. Better to show you. Break wire, okay, we will leave these and the defaults. I will also leave this as they are at the moment, but I'm gonna just make sure that our dimensions are in a millimeter, okay? Great. These ones we will edit them. You can edit these as the way you want them to be, as you prefer per your own preferences, but as we start doing the schematic, we'll get to edit just few things because you want these options to be there by default. You don't want to do something over and over again every time you start a schematic, all right? For instance, a pin, all right? I'm going to select a pin, for instance, right? A pin length for me will be not 0.5 millimeter, it will be 5 millimeter long by default, okay? Oops, sorry. Melds, I go to pen. So yeah, I want my pen to be 5 millimeter by default. Okay, that is basically what I want. I don't want every time I put a pin, I must modify its size. So I want this to be a default length. So I'm just gonna leave it at 5 millimeter. And once every time I put a pin, it's just gonna remember 5 millimeter unless I want to change it. All right. A wire, for instance. A wire will be a small vertices and the color will be blue. All right, that is the default, and you want it like that. Okay, so those are basically the few options that we have that we have to look through now, and let's move on to something else. Again, we'll revisit this as we go on. This will be a continuous learning process. All right. Continuing with the projects. Let's say we want to start a project because that is where you will be starting most of the time. Over here, this is your project panel. You have projects, well, for me at least, I have a projects panel, navigator panel, and component panel. This is how I prefer my panels to be. Sorry about that. This is how I prefer my panels to be. You might want something else. Say, for instance, I don't have navigators, I don't have components there, right? I only have the project panel over here. I'm gonna go to my panels at the bottom there, and as you can see there, there's component. I'm gonna click on it, and it appears there. Say my components appear, say, outside like this, or somewhere in the middle. All I can do is just grab it over there and drag it either this side or that side, depending on where you want it. I want mine this side. I like it this side because my daily work, I use it like this, so I'm used to it. But you might want yours on the side instead, okay? That is up to you. It is a personal preference. There's no right or wrong way of doing this. I like mine on the right side. I mean, on the left side, I'll keep it on left side. I like my properties on the right side. I'll put my properties on the right side. So now we have two tabs there. I've got component tab, projects tab. If you have something else, no problem. Just make sure that you have the projects tab. In case you don't have the projects tab, it's not there. See, even I don't have anything here. I'm just gonna go to panels there, and I see projects. I'm gonna click on it, and if it's not this side, I'll put it over there. But please keep your projects over there. Please just makes it easier for the rest for everybody. So right now I only have the project tab, but I'm also going to add my component tab just because I want it. Okay, perfect. Mine is set nicely there. Um, I'm going to close manufacturer. No, I'm not going to close it for now. Let's just leave it because we're going to use it soon. So over here, you have what you call a project group. All right, this is a project group. Mine is PCB design course. Yours has some generic default name. You don't have to change it right now, but if you want to, to give it a custom name like a PC board learning, what you can do is gonna right click on it and say save project group. When you say save project group, say for instance, I create a new one. Let me say a new project group. All right. No, 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 no. That's not what I want. I want a new project group. New design project group. Like that. Okay, so this will be your default name. So what do I want? I want to save it. I'm gonna say save project group. It will do this, and then you give it a name. I just want to rename mine exactly like that, and then say save. I want to replace mine, and this is what will happen. You can give yours whatever name you want, and that's pretty much it. So this will be a project group. You can have multiple project group. Each will have a different projects that you want. Let's say, for instance, you happen to work on let's say a cell phone. Okay, you're working on a cell phone. You have a Samsung Galaxy S22. All right. In the Samsung Galaxy S22, there is not a single PC board. There's multiple PC board. So you'll have a Samsung Galaxy S22 project group, and in there you'll have different projects for all the PC board that exist in that phone. That's basically what I mean. And then you can create another project group for in a different set of projects. But normally people don't do that. I don't do that. I just keep one project group for everything, and I don't need to worry about that ever again. All right. So we'll just stick to one project group. Okay. Now, for a project, I have two ways I can start a project. I can go to File, like on every software. I can say New and say Project, or I can right click on the projects group there. I can say Add New Project. All right. This is in case I have no project and I have to start from scratch. Since we are doing this course from the get go, we're gonna assume that we don't have a single project, so I'm gonna start this from scratch. All right. Now, for now, I'm gonna skip on a local project because we're gonna be working locally. We don't have an Altium 365 subscription, and we don't have a version controlled versioning system yet. So you're gonna stick to local, and I want an empty PC board project. Altium calls every project that includes a PC board a PC board project. Even if you only want the schematic, it will count it as a PC board project. Okay, so that's why we're gonna be PC board project for now. In the future, we will learn how to use multi-board project. So for now, we're gonna call it empty PC board project, and here we're gonna call it say lesson one. We're gonna call it lesson one, and we're gonna call this what we call we're gonna call this 5 volts LDO PSU. So we're gonna do a quick 5 volts LDO PSU project. All right, that will be our lesson one. Okay, we will do this from scratch together. We will put together an LDO project at first just to understand how the schematic works, the different kind of things in the schematic, and we'll spend all kinds of minutes on this part so to understand every single aspect of the schematic. All right, we're just not gonna do put together a schematic, you follow along, and then that's basically it. No, no, no. We will really deep dive into this a small project, and we'll deep dive. We'll take a deep dive into it. All right. Where do I want my project saved? Well, I have a specific folder I want my things to go. All right, so that's where I want my things to go. What I want, I'm gonna pin this to quick. Oh, no, it's already in quick pin to quick access. Yes. All right. So I'm gonna navigate to that project. It's in the quick access there. I'm gonna select that folder. This is where my projects will be. All right, so it's inside there, and this is where my projects is going to be. So if I say create, you will see that in that specific folder it will create lesson one folder, LDO project. If I go in there, you'll see this is our Altium project. As you can even see the Altium PCB project. All right. Let's say I select view. Um, Navigation pane. Hold on. That's not what I want to show. Okay. So this is our Altium project. All right. I'll hide that. And as you can see there now, one thing I need to put your attention to, because I added a project, this lesson one project, into this project group. Notice that it shows that asterisk sign again to tell us that we have something in our project group that isn't saved. So I'm going to say save, everything is fine. So whenever you see in Altium, there's an asterisk sign somewhere, that means the document has been modified and it's not saved yet. Okay. Now, we've got our lesson one project and it has no document in it. So we need to add documents to it, all right? Now, every PC board project has a schematic, mostly, and a PC board file. Sometimes you will have a PC board without a schematic based on the application that you have, but we're gonna get there. It's not always the case that you're gonna have a schematic and then a PC board. But in our case, we're learning PC board design from the ground up. So we will start with schematic designs. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click there and say add new to project and say schematic. I repeat, I'm going to right click to on the project, right click on the project and say add new to project schematic. If I go to file and I say new schematic, that is completely different. It's going to add schematic. Uh, oh, it actually does add it on the project, which is nice. Okay, I actually did not expect that to happen. But normally, if you have multiple projects and you're not sure which one is active, rather right click on this, add new to project, schematic. Okay. Now, this is our template schematic. All right. Now, you will notice one thing at first. Automatically here, I have my property tab that added itself. All right. Great. Now, let's stick to that. If you don't have the property tab, say this is what you have. I'm gonna click. Let me also close the manufacturer part. So if this is what you have, I'm gonna click on the panels on the left there and say properties. Okay, properties. All right. I'm just gonna ask in the chat quickly if is everything still fine. Is everything still fine? If you guys have issues, please respond. All right. So now, I have my property in my property tab there. It is under the general tab and parameter, and I also have the parameter tab. All right, these are the few things that we'll go through very soon. All right, probably in the next lesson or so, to not make these lessons very long. Right now, as you can see, I've got this is what I'm going to attract your attention to. So my visible grid is 1 millimeter. My snap grid is 5 millimeter. I don't want this. What do I mean by that? Okay. To understand what is going to happen with this grid, I am going to bring back my manufacturer part search um, tab, and I'm going to search for a resistor, just a resistor, maybe anything, just a resistor. I'm going to click on the passive, or I'll just say resistor like that. Uh, Before I even search, I can see all the default parts that exist inside Altium. Um, okay, let me back up a little bit. What is it that I'm doing? Okay. Over here, I selected the, let's say I go back to all. This is what we have, all right? I want to add a component here so that I can explain the grid, okay? So you can follow along or you can watch first and then you will go back to in the video to see what exactly I did. So I'm going to go to the passives. Passive components, we have capacitors, inductors, resistors, and transmission lines. All right. So I'm gonna go to passives. Once I click passive, you'll see that it filters everything here under passives only, right? And I want a resistor, for instance. I'm just gonna say let's resistors, and over here, let me say, let me make this bigger so that you can see what's happening, and then click there so that we can see the details of a component. Now, what you are seeing right now is the library inside Altium's own library, which they call the vault. Altium has predefined library files, all right, that we can import in our circuits. We are not going to use these libraries. I do not like these libraries. Instead, what we will do is we will create our own to match exactly this course, what we need, and our own for our own purposes. All right. But for now, just for illustration purposes, I am going to place this component. So what I'm going to do is, because this is library provided by Altium, I'm just going to say right click on it and say place. What it's going to do, it's going to download it. And once it's done downloading it, let's give it a minute. And there we go. It places it. Okay. It places it for us. There we go. All right. Now this is what I need. I'm going to close that. And now let's go back to our properties. Let's see what happens. Now, with Altium, what you see in your properties depend on what is selected. Right now, nothing is selected, therefore you see this sheet's properties. But if I select this resistor, you see the properties of the resistor, okay? You can see it's designated there. Normally in PC board, in schematic, you have like R1, R2, R3, R4, and so on. That's your resistor. So at the moment, because we don't have a designator yet, we don't have a specific designator for this one yet, that's why you see, let me zoom in like that. That's why you see just says R like that. Okay. Now, the first thing I want to explain is the grid. For me to see the grid, by grid we mean the small little squares that you have here. As I zoom out, as you'll see that the grid is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. As I zoom in, we see more and more and more and more details, right? Second. Okay. Now, right here, you see visible grid says 1 millimeter. How do I know what this exactly means? Say I take this resistor, I want to attract your attention to something at the bottom here. Say I select this resistor, all right? And then I move it. You see, you see that this resistor is moving from one location to another. It's basically jumping. It is snapping from one location to another. The distance by which it's snapping, it's moving in one swoop, in one go, like that. That's what you call your snap grid. And currently our snap grid is 5 millimeter. So which means if I select this thing and I move it there, it has moved 5 millimeter. If I select it, move it there, it's moved 5 millimeter. All right, so we understand this is our snap grid. Our visible grid is 1 millimeter. What does that mean? Say I move this resistor to a specific location, say 140. Oh, sorry, never mind. That's not what I want. Um, 130, 135. All right. So that's where this resistor is at the moment. If I move it there, you see it's now 140 on y-axis. If I move it down, 135. So basically, I'm changing the x and y coordinate. Very important. PC board design works in a Cartesian plane where you have x and y, which means look at the bottom left corner of your screen. You'll see that's x and y coordinate, and the grid is 5 millimeter. So if I press my mouse there, it says 0, 0. As I move up, you see y is going up. If I go back there and I move like this, x is going up. And if I move in diagonal like this, x and y is changing. All right, so Where this a resistor is, it means X is 130 there, and Y is 135, as you can see there. 130, 135 at the bottom here, so 130, 135 there. Okay. Now, this is not the grade I want. I want my grade to be 2.5 millimeter and stay there. So let's discover how we fix that. Say I go to my my preferences under schematics and I go to grid. Say if I disable this, that, I disable that. Now in the snap grid of on the snap grid, in the 2.5 millimeter snap grid, I want snap distance of 2.5 millimeter as well, and I want a visible grid of 0.5. What happens if I do that? Remember, I disabled everything else. Just click on apply, say okay, and this is what I have. You see what I see? So what happens now? Let's say we move this. Please notice, pay attention to the y coordinate of this resistor. If I now move it, now it's 132.25. If I move it again, and so on. Do you see what I mean? That is basically what is happening. Okay. So if I make visible grid 1 millimeter, that doesn't change much because my snap grid is what is important for me. Okay. So now this small little tiny grids that you see here, what are those? We go back over there. Say I change this to 2.5 as well, right? 2.5. Obviously, it's gonna say millimeter. It's gonna, but let me just be safe and say millimeter like that. You see, now the grid is like different. Now this small little square, do you see? Now I can move my resist. I can see exactly the small little square by which I am moving my component. All right, so now we've got our grid perfectly the way we want it. Okay, now visible grid is 2.5. Do I want to see this snap grid, visible snap grid? Nope. Let's say I disable that. Does it change anything? It does not. Actually, there we go. If I disable I hide my visible grid like that, you can see that our grid has disappeared. If I bring it back, our grid is back. Okay, good. What else do I want to show you? Currently, our we understand the grid, right? So this is the grid we'll be working with. Um, if I press the G key on your keyboard, the letter G, is you can see that it's busy toggling between different grids. All right. So we'll stick to the 2.5 millimeter grid. All right. Our sheet color is white, of course, but if you want it in a different color, some people like to be extra. They want a sheet like this. I don't understand why people would do that, but I'm not going to judge. Other people want it gray because they want to be extra like that. Others prefer it like this, but for now, we'll just stick to white. And when we design or when I supply you guys with the templates for the schematic, that's what we will be using. All right, perfect. Still in the sheet properties, because remember, if I select the resistor, it will show me the resistor's properties. If I don't select anything, it will show me the sheet properties. Currently, the formatting of our sheet is the formatting that we have is based on the standard template. If I change that, it's gonna say, for instance, I select OrCAD A, it changes it to like this. If I select letter, it changes it to like that. That's the size, the sheet size. So I'm gonna go okay. But if we have a specific template that we want to use within Altium, I'm gonna say for instance, I select that and I say ISO i3, and I want to update only this document, and I don't want to change any parameter. Okay, this is how the ISO looks like. All right, and it's weird, of course. A3 is a little bit too big. If I want something else, D size for instance, I can change it like that. This is basically, it's going to depend on what you guys are working on, what your personal preferences or company preferences, or which whatever it works for you. But what we normally going to do is we will set up templates, all right? And then we will upload our templates and we'll be selecting them from there. Okay. But for now, let's just say standard A4. Holy flip. What was the template before? I can't remember. Um, ISO. Was it ISO? What was it here? I can't remember, guys. Uh, okay, it was something like this, more or less. All right. But in any case, we'll create our own. We'll upload our own and everything will be fine. All right. So the point of this exercise was for me to show you the grid. Also, by the way, our grid, now you see that the grid, because I changed the template, our grid is different, isn't it? I'm gonna press the GQ again. It's not working. So basically what we're seeing right now, this template, the visible grid that we're seeing right now, it is very dependent. The grid that we see right now is very dependent on our what do you call this, on our selected template. So I'm gonna close this, because good thing I didn't save yet, and then just reopen the schematic, and it will, or should open it up with our default template again, our A4 sheet. Okay, I'll go back to my manufacturer part list, say I place my resistor there, and if I go back to my properties, you see my grid is not the way I want. I press the G key. There's my grid. And of course, so we will forever work in the with this grid, guys, 2.5 millimeter. How do you know you're in the right grid? That grid, that is the grid over there. Okay, but it will be set up in our template that I will supply to you guys, and then I'll also show you how to create templates basically. Okay, so basically that is the grid. Okay, now that we have our schematic, I'm gonna delete that. Once you have a schematic added to your project, okay, you've set up all kinds of parameters that you need to set, but mostly because we will have a template, most of the time we will not, uh, most of the time we will not have to change anything on the schematic sheet. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna say save schematic, and I'm gonna call this power. No, let me call this test schematic. Okay, we're not gonna use this. I say test. All right. So now this schematic is there. Okay. Pretending, let's say you put all kinds of parts and everything, you're done. What you need to do next is create a PC board project, a PC board file. I'm sorry, a PC board file. So I'm gonna right click there and say add new to project PCB. Okay. It loads up, it's thinking. Let's give it a minute to think. There we go. We've got our PC board file. Again, this will also be dependent on our templates, but notice that I don't have my properties panel. I'm going to open my properties panel. Now notice that because I'm on the PC board now, properties window is different. If I go to my schematic, I can go to my schematic there. It shows me different properties. Go to my PC board, it shows me different properties. So as we said, the property windows will show you information based on what is open, what is selected. Okay. Now, just like we did with our schematic, the first thing that we need to do is to make sure that our grid is perfect. We are still working on a millimeter grid, and then we need to have a default grid from which to start. Okay. Now, this grid will be company, or yeah, it will be company dependent. All right. So it is something that you can change on the fly based on your own requirement. But I suggest you stick to a grid that uh, will be based on what your company uses, depending on your pick and place machine. For instance, how your the company's pick and place assembly machine uh, places stuff, right? How accurate it is and stuff like that. That's the grid that you're going to be using. But usually, I stick to a zero point 0.1 millimeter grid. I start from there, and should I need to change that, I half it. All right. Now, to make sure that we have a default grid as well, I'm going to go to my properties. And this time, because we work on the PCB, I'm going to go to PC board editor, and I'm going to go to general. Do I see it have? General is, where is this? Where is this? Is it default? Mm, nope, it's not in the default. This is primitives. I don't want primitives. I want grid. Where do I get the grid again? I forgot. Sorry, guys. There's no default grid here, is there? Display. Nope. All right. Here's another way for you to change the grid. You just go to the tools, not preferences, design. I know the shortcut, but I want to show you the option report root. No. Where is this option? Where is this option? No, it's not here. Design. I shouldn't be in design as well. View grids. There we go. Right. So inside the grid, say we're gonna set um, global grid first. So now our grid is in mil right now. We want it in millimeter. I'm gonna cancel that for now. So you see here at the bottom, again, it says grid mil. Altium has a very nice shortcut. If I press the Q, it shows me the current grid now in a millimeter, and this is not what we want. So I'm gonna go to edit, um, what is edit? View grid, set global snap grid. So I'm gonna say global snap grid 0.1. Okay, and the grid is 0.1 millimeter. That's my grid. Now, on the right hand side in your properties window, there's something that is very important. You've got your selection filters, we're going to ignore that for now, and then you got your snap options. I'm going to say snap between grid and axis, both, and I'm going to say snap current layer, but ignoring a little bit what is here. We're going to go through them later. Snap distance, very important. Um, Let me do this. Say I need to have a part here. Oh, there was a part. There we go. There is a component, right? This is a resistor, okay? So what is the snap distance, okay? Right now, snap distance is the gain. Let me make it big so that I can illustrate it properly. What does this mean? If I say, for instance, off, I say, and I, wait. Yeah, not 1 minute. To say 5. Uh, not doing what I wanted to do. But in any case, you want this to be the smallest possible. Usually, I make it the same as my grid. Snap axis range, I can make it also the same as my grid. Okay, so this is just an ultimate option that makes your life easier. All right, so that is basically what it does. Another thing I want to show you is if I press and if I press G and then I go to grid properties over there, I want to set up a few things. I have fine and then coarse. Fine, I want lines. See what happens. What does that mean? I make lines. So if I zoom in, you see it's not dots anymore, it becomes lines. Okay. Let me go back again, grid properties. If I change that to dot and I say lines there, so now becomes, let's see, as I zoom in those fine grids there, it shows me the dot. But if I zoom out, course is line. Okay. If I go back again, this is again a your own preferences. If I go to uh, I say course I want dots, fine, I say do not draw. I can say that, okay. So as I zoom out, this is what you see. If I zoom in, I don't see any, I just see my normal grade, which is perfect. This is actually how I would want it. All right, so good grade there. G grid, as you can see, to get to this, I can use the press Control G. All right, so that's my grid, perfect grid multiplier. I can change that whatever I want, but this is perfect the way I want it. I'm gonna say okay, great. So again, the grid allows us to place things specifically. You will see now that as I move my mouse on the top here, it shows me the X and Y coordinates again, with this here being our origin 0, 0. As you can see, they shows 0, 0 on the, hold on, like that. My mouse is moving, guys. There. All right. So 0, 0 over there as for X and Y. As I get here, that tells me, it tells me here I'm at 107.78. If I select that specific component, 107.5, 78.2. Exactly 107.5, 78.2. There is a component. Okay, perfect. So that's basically the grid. Very important. So remember what we learned in this one. Schematic, our grid must always be 2.5 millimeter for the sake of this course. This is for us. This is our way. It's not the universal way. It's not how the world does things. This is the way we will be doing things. When you get to work with PC board design for some people in some companies or as a freelancer, and they have a specific set of rules, they will indicate what their grid is, how they do their things. But usually this is not a problem. But so our way will be, our PC board will be working on a 0.1 millimeter grid. Our schematic will be working with a 2.5 millimeter grid. All right, so this is where we see our grade 2.0.1. How do I get to that? I'm gonna click G. As you can see there, I can select that 2.5 to 0.1 millimeter grid. I can go to grid properties. I can go to snap grid properties and then set it up over there. Okay. If I go back to my schematics, if I press G, same logic, you can see, you'll see my options are changing. But because I disabled schematic grid properties there, that's why it only, let me see, I disable those. Okay. You see, as I disable the other options, it's only showing me 2.5 and nothing, 2.5 and nothing, and so on. All right. So those are the first things that we need to know about Altium interface for the schematic. Okay, so to quickly recap, we created a project to go by going to File, New Project, and once we have a project renamed and everything, we basically we did file, New Project. We gave it a name. We selected a location for it, and we created. And then we added a schematic, and then we added a PC board. That's what we did. Okay. As we go further and further and further with this course, we will explore all kinds of options. You will get to learn a few different things and what you need to do when you need to put together a schematic, all different options to make your life easier, and so on. All right? Perfect. I think I will end this video here. Um, should you guys need, I will now just wait for questions. Should you guys have any question, or if you need me to repeat something, go on. But ultimately, remember, you can always go back in the video and watch again. Let's give it a minute until I get at least a question or people confirm we good. If you can confirm that we good, everybody is watching basically confirm that we good, then we'll end this. Otherwise, you can ask me a question, type it in the chat, and I will respond to it. Very good, guys. Perfect, perfect, perfect. I sent through a poll for you guys to just say yes or no. I'll give it 30 more seconds. You guys can vote. How is the video quality, guys? Can you watch it in 1080 in full HD? Or please give me some feedback so that I know what to change next, because this is more like a test run as well. But yeah, how is the quality, guys? All right, I hear that the quality of the video is not so great. Just keep in mind, guys, I am also I'm also viewing my own stream, so from my end, it looks kind of good. Maybe I'm not suggesting that you guys are lying or anything like that, but maybe check first, check if you can edit the video quality. There's a chance that you did not select the right quality, and that's why you're not seeing the properly. Just make sure that you have the highest quality selected. Not Don't leave it to auto. Don't leave it to auto. All right, and just make sure that it's the right. Let me show you what I mean. Say I have this right, so just go to there and then say quality and to the highest, because as you can see mine can show me easily there. But yeah, just make sure that's the case, and yeah, that's it. But I will see how we can improve this. Yeah, I'll see how we can improve this, and then yeah, until then, thanks guys for joining in this trial run of PCB design, and the link will always be there for you guys to go back to. If you want to go back to the channel, the link will always be there. All of you have my personal number. You can text me, ask me whatever question. I am gonna hold another session on Friday. Um, I'm gonna hold another session on Friday evening. I will set it up so that you guys can get notifications, and then you can plan ahead. But in any case, you can always watch the videos afterwards because the videos will still be there. So for now, I'm just gonna end the chat. I mean the live video. Thank you guys.